Okay, picture this. You walk into any big bookstore today, right? You're going to see shelves, entire sections, just overflowing with Japanese manga. But if you want to find the latest American superhero comic, you've got to hunt down a specialty shop. So how did these two industries, both born from the same art form, end up in such wildly different places? Well, that's the puzzle we're going to unravel today.
And this really is the core question. Look, this isn't about which one is better art or tells better stories. It's about how one became this global mass-market phenomenon, while the other became a beloved but much, much smaller niche. And the crazy part is, this didn't happen by accident. It was a choice.
I mean, just look at the difference. We are talking about two completely separate destinies here. The US comic industry basically retreated into this specialized fortress built for the existing fans. Meanwhile, manga was engineered from the ground up to be everywhere for everyone. And this difference, it wasn't about taste, it was about design. And it all goes back to one single critical decision.
That decision, that fork in the road, it happened decades ago. And it had nothing to do with superheroes or cool art styles. Nope. It was about something way less glamorous, but as it turns out, infinitely more important: distribution. See, how you sell something fundamentally changes what you sell and who you can sell it to.
So here's the American side of that fork in the road. They called it the direct market. And for the big publishers like Marvel and DC, it was a lifesaver. Their sales to comic shops were now guaranteed, final, non-returnable. But think about where all that financial risk went. It was shifted 100% onto the shoulders of thousands of small, independent comic shops. This move saved the publishers for sure, but it also started the clock on American comics becoming basically invisible to the mainstream public.
And if you want to know why they had to change, well, this is it. The old system, the newsstand model, was just unbelievably wasteful. Retailers would just rip the covers off any comics that didn't sell, mail the covers back, and get a full refund. Publishers are printing, shipping, and then paying to destroy millions and millions of unsold comics. This image, it's so powerful. It shows a system that was literally tearing itself apart.
Okay, now let's hop over to Japan and see the other path they took. They perfected this absolutely incredible two-tiered system. It all starts with these cheap, almost disposable anthology magazines. We're talking phone book-sized bricks packed with dozens of different stories. And crucially, they're sold everywhere, every train station, every convenience store, making them a super easy impulse buy for literally anyone. The whole thing is designed for maximum possible exposure.
And this is the absolute genius of it. It's a funnel. So, step 1, you grab a cheap magazine on your way home from work. Step 2, you get totally hooked on one of the series inside. Well, the most popular ones get collected into these awesome paperback volumes called tankobon. And then, step 3, those collected volumes are sold in mainstream bookstores, right next to the real books, giving them this cultural legitimacy. It's a perfect pipeline for turning a casual, curious reader into a dedicated, paying fan.
So you see, these two systems, they didn't just change where you buy comics. They changed everything. They completely shaped who the audience was, what kinds of stories got told, and even what a career as a creator looked like. In the US, the direct market created this dangerous feedback loop. By only selling to existing fans in specialty shops, comics became invisible to any potential newcomers. So to keep that dedicated base happy, publishers just doubled down again and again on superheroes. And this insular focus, it led directly to that disastrous speculator bubble in the 90s, where people were buying comics not to read, but as investments. And when that bubble burst, it almost destroyed the entire industry, closing thousands of shops.
Now contrast that with what was happening in Japan. Because those big anthology magazines are explicitly targeted at different groups of people, the system naturally supports a huge diversity of genres. You've got shonen for boys, shoujo for girls, seinen for young men, josei for adult women, and more. By designing for everyone, manga, well, it became for everyone. It's as simple as that.
And this is where you can really see the human side of it all. In the US, with its work-for-hire system, the publisher owns the characters you create. You get a page rate, which is steady work, but you get almost nothing if your creation becomes a billion-dollar movie. In Japan, the creator, the mangaka, owns their work. Now, it is incredibly high risk. If your series isn't popular, it gets canceled fast. But if it's a hit, the financial rewards from royalties on books, anime, merchandise, it's life-changing.
And that quote right there, that demographic blind spot, that is the absolute key to this entire story. By catering exclusively to one type of fan in one type of store, the American industry made itself completely blind to a massive potential audience that was hiding in plain sight.
So this is the moment. This is when it all comes together, when these two parallel worlds finally collide right here in the American market. And what happened wasn't an invasion, it was a discovery.
The hero of this chapter is a manga series you've probably heard of, Sailor Moon. A publisher called Tokyopop brought it over to the US, but the real breakthrough, the moment that changed everything, came from a book buyer at Walden Books named Kurt Hasler. He noticed a signal that the entire comic book industry was deaf to. Young women were coming into his bookstores constantly asking for Sailor Moon because they loved the anime on TV. So he put it in his stores. By selling it in bookstores, they completely bypassed the comic shop system and reached an audience that all the experts insisted simply didn't exist.
And this is the single most important takeaway. It's revolutionary. Tokyopop and Walden Books didn't create a new market for manga, they just opened the door to one that was already there, patiently waiting. The US comic industry hadn't lost this audience, it had systematically built a world where it couldn't even see them in the first place.
You know, this whole story is basically a masterclass in how markets work. And we can boil it all down to 5 timeless lessons that really apply to any industry, not just comics. Lesson 1 is about systems. The insiders in the US comic industry knew, they were certain, that girls didn't read comics. It took an outsider, Tokyopop, who wasn't trapped by that old way of thinking, to just try the Japanese model. Sometimes knowing a system too well just makes you blind to its biggest flaws.
Second, selection. The entire American direct market system was designed to select against a book like Sailor Moon. It wouldn't have survived there. But one buyer at one bookstore chain made a different choice, a counter-consensus bet, and he ended up unlocking a billion-dollar industry. Growth is almost always hiding in the places the experts have decided to ignore.
Third, signals. For years, the US market was listening to a false signal, speculation. How much might this comic be worth one day? But that Walden Books buyer, he heard the pure, clear signal of what customers wanted to read right now. You have to learn to listen for genuine demand, not just market noise.
And that leads to lesson 4, interest. That speculator boom was built on the artificial interest of people who saw comics as a commodity. It was fragile, and of course, it collapsed. Manga's success, on the other hand, was built on the genuine interest of fans who actually loved the stories and characters. That is how you build something that lasts.
And finally, synergy. Sailor Moon didn't just appear out of nowhere. The hit anime show had already created a massive ready-made audience that was hungry for more. Success is always amplified when you can leverage the momentum from related media, whether that's anime, video games, a movie, whatever.
Which brings us right to the final question, the one I want you to take with you. This story isn't just about comics. It's about how incredibly easy it is for any successful industry to build systems that eventually make them blind. So think about it. What massive, underserved audience is hiding in plain sight in your world, just waiting for someone to finally see them?